Today, I'm going to tell you about how much I pay for a 1,000 word article that I hire a writer from Upwork. So, welcome. I'm Doug Cunnington, founder of Niche Site Project. I hope that shortly you'll be able to hear me and that there are no other technical difficulties. I am a tiny bit late because I did have a couple technical difficulties. Welcome. If you are joining live, thanks for hopping on. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for hopping on too. Hope you get something out of it. Lance is on, John's on, Angela as well. Welcome everybody. I think we'll have a few people joining in. I didn't do a Tuesday tear down yesterday. If people missed out on that, I just took a break, to be honest with you. So hopefully we'll be able to get back on schedule and publish at my leisure, which is actually the schedule that I follow. We have Arvin, David, and Jaron is on also. Today I'm going to talk about like hiring. Now, a couple things I'm going to mention. I'm going to go over 3 specific areas, and let me look at the description: how I find writers, how much I pay writers, which is kind of the main topic, and I'll share my content templates as well. So, you know what? I'm just going to cut to the chase. The title of this is "How much should I pay for a 1,000 word article?" If you're hiring someone on Upwork for your niche site, I usually pay between like $14 and $16 for 1,000 words. All right. So if you are only tuning in just to see that, that is the answer, but I'm sure you want some of the other details as well. I do share my templates and stuff. So I put several links. I'm going to walk you through a couple of the links. There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 videos, which are tightly related to like content, as far as like how many keywords do you need to start a site, how many posts do you need to start a site, writing the content, how long the content should be, and then developing a content plan. So all of it's related. And if you're interested in hiring writers, you're probably interested in these other topics. I'll probably create a playlist with these videos in it. But if you're tuning in right now, just mark this video, like it, whatever you need to do to save it, so you can come back and watch these videos. They all sort of go together. If you want the templates, there's a link to Niche Site Project. There's a blog post that covers some of the ideas that we're going to talk about today. And if you search for "get the templates for free" on that blog post and click it, you'll be able to get a link directly to your the templates. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to go over the 3 things. I'm going to answer some questions as well. I will answer questions about like the length of the content. I see David's asking that. That's cool. I'll answer questions about regular like content sort of ideas. If it's tightly related to content, I'll answer it. If not, on Fridays I do a general Q&A. There's a way to submit questions for that, which I don't have a link in here, but I have a bit.ly link. So if you have just random questions, and I know other people are going to tune in a minute and they won't hear this plea from me to only ask questions about the related stuff, but I'll place a link and just remind people. I can't blame people for showing up not when we start. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how I find writers. So I mentioned that I pay about $15 for 1,000 words. Some people are like, "That's insane. That is so expensive. I would never pay that much." And then other people are saying, "That's so cheap. I can't believe you could find writers for that cheap." It is amazing how big of a range people pay, right? And just it depends on your personal interaction with writers and your experience, whether you think I'm paying insanely too much or insanely cheap. But it's an alarming spread, and people are very passionate about it. They get upset at me on both sides of the spectrum. Here's my approach. All right. So first of all, I want to, pay a writer a fair wage, right? I'm not trying to get the cheapest piece of content I can get, right? That's not really the goal. Our goal is to get the best ROI for whatever investment we're doing, whether it's time or money or some other resource. But you want to get the best ROI. So if you're only looking at how much you're spending, you're looking at the wrong metric, right? You need to understand like the return that you'll get. Sure, you won't know at the beginning. You have to make some assumptions and then adjust along the way. But the point is, I found that, $15 or so is pretty good. And that's just for the writing part. Okay. I have editors and there's another piece of the puzzle in there too. But the point is, I go to Upwork and I'm typically looking for new freelancers, right? A new freelancer is just dabbling probably in Upwork, right? They just signed up for their account. Maybe they have some friends that were working as a freelancer on Upwork and they suggested that they try it out. It's been working out well for them. So they suggest it to their friend. They have no reviews. It's hard for them to build up a resume and a bunch of reviews on Upwork. So the idea is you can hire people that are like underpriced, right? So I'm looking for people that are underpriced because they don't have reviews yet. So maybe they're journalists or maybe they are, you know, grad students. I actually end up hiring a lot of grad students who are in literature or they're an English major or a history major or something where writing is their focus and they're very good writers. And they could just, I mean, they're used to writing papers, they could just churn it out. So basically, if you find people that are underpriced, then you can get, overqualified people for what you need and you could pay them a little bit less, but in return, you need to write really good reviews for them. So if you write, honest reviews, but if you write a thorough review, they're going to appreciate it. So if you're specific, you mentioned certain things that they did. One of the things I like to say is, I hired such and such writer. They did a pretty good job, but I had a few edits and I sent it back. I had my suggestions and then they turned it around quick. If you're specific about what they're good at, they're going to appreciate it. One, that you acknowledged it. And then two, it's actually a good review because if it's too perfect, right? If all the reviews seem too perfect, then it's not as useful than if it's like authentic and real. And it's not unusual to have a couple edits and you just send it over to uh, like the writer again. So basically, if you find people that are underpriced, then you'll be able to, get it a little bit cheaper. And I see Duke says that he pays 18 to 20 bucks per 1,000 words. And you know what? At that, I have paid that before because sometimes, you're working with a writer for a long time and they're doing a good job. I'll give them a raise, right? I mean, if someone's doing a good job, I don't want to lose them. I've already mentioned that I pay about 15 bucks for 1,000 words, and that seems to work well for me. And what happens, generally with freelancers is they come and go, right? They're literally freelancers, right? So they're going to have a little bit more of a like transient nature. Some people try it out, they don't like it. Maybe they are between jobs and they're only doing it for, a short amount of time. So there's a lot of reasons why someone may come or go through the freelancing world. So, with that said, I'm I'm paying a little bit less knowing that I may have to hire a lot more people over time. So that is, sort of the long and short of it. And then as far as my content templates, I have a few, right? So again, if you're just joining up, there's a link at the bottom or somewhere in the description there where it's like niche site project, 2-step process to blah, blah, blah. It's a blog post. I talk about content. There's a link in there. It says get templates here for free. All you have to do is click on it, enter your email address, and then you'll get a link to my content templates. They consist of like the job listing that I use. I talk about, I think I even have like the template that I send over, like the instructions. I can't remember everything in there, but it's a set of templates that you can use to hire writers. Okay, so that is the main part of the content that I wanted to cover today. As far as the questions here, I'll get over to that. And I see David. At first, you are asking, what's the target length? Ever go as much as 2,500 words. So the target length is whatever I need. So it depends on the job. Um, ever go as much as 2,500 words? That's almost, I mean, yeah, that I do. Yeah. So I have very long content. 2,500 is, not specifically long, at least for me. And then I see Hydra is asking about super chat. You know what? I turned it on after you were hammering me about it. And you know what? To be honest, I don't know what else I have to do over here to turn it on. I thought it was on. Is there like some special thing I have to do? I didn't look that close, to be honest with you. I'll take a quick look over here, though. Okay. And then Riza says, you didn't hear the whole part. It's $15 for a native speaker. That's correct. Yeah, for a native speaker. Hey, that's strange. You know what? Hydra, I did turn on Super Chat, and I'm not sure, like, why it's not on. Like, I already went through this little process some other time in the past. And Duke is saying you pay 18 to 20 because of the English quality and the lack of editing that's needed. So that's totally, expected. That's cool. And I personally, I hire a different person to do the editing. Just for me personally, I know it's easier for me to like edit someone else's work than to edit my own. So my thought is I'd rather just separate the two tasks. Just for me, it makes it a little bit easier. So Adrian is on. What's up? Good to have you there. And Josh is too. Johan as well. So when people talk about the price, it is right to have in mind that $10 is not the same value in Europe, Asia, and so on. Yeah, that's true. And I'm typically just working with either US or Canada based folks. Not 100% of the time, but in general. So whether or not like they are actually located in, whatever country that I think that they're originating from, it doesn't really matter as long as they're native English speakers. So if they're able, if they live in Southeast Asia or something like that, and they get a little bit more value for their dollar and they're getting paid in US dollars, then that's fine with me. And let's see. Okay. And Junaid says you pay $5 for 1,000 words. Some editing is required, but a very solid article. And Junaid, that is a great price. I almost can't believe that, right? Like if it's really that good, then I can't imagine that it's that cheap. Like it just doesn't make sense to me, because if someone could get paid more, they would, right? Unless you found a, similar. I've been able to see like I've been able, well, I guess what I'm saying is if you found another example of like underpriced or undervalued stuff, then maybe it's totally possible. Okay, and Riyadh says, what about iWriter? I'm not sure about that, but can I use this website? Yes, if you would like to, you can. Basically, I found that services are terrible. They're very much overpriced. However, they have the advantage of you not having to deal with the admin stuff, but there's a good chance that I don't know, there's a good chance that it's overpriced. When I've used services like Text Broker, it was just terrible. It was a terrible experience. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to do that again. So I found the quality to be just awful. But I mean, iWriter has been around for a long time. So if you wanted to give it a shot, I mean, that would be fine. Josh is asking, what tools do I use to identify the target word count and other on-page metrics? I use SEO Quake. I have a video on it, so you should check it out. Card said you saw one of the Webrus videos on outsourcing. He was paying 50 cents per article. Okay. I would check, I would verify like what type of writing he was having done. So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound right to me. So it could have been for a very specific purpose. Ravi says, "Is it possible to buy the course now?" Ravi, you know what? Sorry, I saw that you left some comments and stuff the other day. No, enrollment is closed right now, but you could sign up for the wait list. Shoot me an email at doug@nichesiteproject.com. And because I know you asked a couple questions about it. And are you, Ravi, just curious, are you not on the email list? Did you miss out on the whole, on all the on all the emails where I was telling people about it? Just curious, because like it's a different like audience, right? So the real stuff that I do, right? All this YouTube stuff is really interesting and all, but the real stuff that I do is on the blog and it's in the email list. So if you're not on the email list, you're kind of missing out on some of the best stuff. All right. Hydra says, can I talk about how to properly structure an article if you are writing it yourself, how to properly target keywords? It is beyond the scope of what I'm talking about today, Hydra, but the other videos in the description go over some of that stuff. If you Google the perfect Amazon review, you should find my template. And then I also have a couple other videos where I talk about the perfect Amazon template. David says, is there a way of ensuring that a writer doesn't resell the work they do for you to somebody else or potentially hand over copied material to you? So, as far as like ensuring that a writer doesn't resell the work they do for you, if you hire a professional, then you're going to be okay. Because if someone is a journalist or they're, in school and they're like trying to be a professional writer in some capacity or an editor or something like that, like it's just not worth it for them to put themselves in that position to be like plagiarizing work and or doing something like super unethical. As far as like handing over the work to someone else, it would be unusual for someone to have the opportunity to sell the exact same work to someone else. It would be unusual for that to take place. As far as copying the work, there are tools that you can use, David. It's like Copyscape. There's a couple tools, but you know what? I never spend the time to do it. So I would say if you hire a professional, then you're probably all right. Here's the deal. If you're paying whatever, like 50 cents per article, or if you're paying like a super low rate, $5 would be, some people may be able to write it for $5. That you could get a native English speaker from like, I think like I've seen some, and actually I've tested, working with other people. So I think I've hired people from like Kenya and South Africa a few times, Jamaica, um, maybe even some South American countries, maybe Venezuela, where, you know, they spoke like in the interactions, the English was really good. And I was like, hey, I'll give it a shot. And I worked with them and it was mostly fine, but there were a couple things that weren't quite right. And then we have, so David, yeah, it's a little tough at some point. Um, you just have to like trust that they're doing, good work. And by the way, when I use text broker, this has been a couple years, so maybe they've cleaned things up, but I literally they run Copyscape. They run the articles which are submitted to you, they run it through Copyscape for you. And I would like receive articles that were like 25% like copied, right? And then like text broker allowed that to be submitted to me. And I'm like, what what is happening here? Like I'm paying a premium amount for this service, and like they're literally telling me that 25% of the work was copied. So I was like, I'm out. This is bananas. So yeah, Hydra. Yeah, check out those videos. They should answer a lot of your questions. And perhaps next time I'll get the super chat going on here. And Ravi says, you are on the email list, but you checked after some days and the course was sold out and the waiting list, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, Robbie. Yeah, shoot me an email. Brandon says, good evening. What's going on? You're creating up to 16 KGR keyword golden ratio articles um, starting this month for about $50 each. Non native but dependable writers. What are my thoughts? I well, how long are the articles? So it could be really underpriced or really overpriced at $50 each. For me, that sounds a tad expensive, but maybe they're super long. Now, here's the thing. I would recommend 1,000 words. Okay. For $50 each and it's non-native, I think that is kind of overpriced, Brandon, unless I'm missing some piece of the puzzle. So I would say, 1,000 words is what you should aim for, and then in like a month or two, you could see how well it's going, like improve the articles that are doing well, that is. But I think $50 each is it's a little steep. So everyone, don't forget there's a way to get the templates. If you are just tuning in now, perhaps you can rewind and get the longer explanation. But basically, you can get the templates that I use if you follow the link that's in the description to Niche Site Project. You search for like get the templates for free, something like that. You should be able to like click that link, enter your email address, and then a pop up will show you a link to get to it. Simon, how's it going? Riza says, do I think hiring copywriters to write the content is worth the money? I don't think so, but I've never tried it, to be honest with you. Never tried it, but I think it would probably be overpriced. David says, how often do I release blog articles? And what is the average word length? So those questions, my answers to those questions will not be helpful. How often do I release blog articles? Almost never. And what's the average word length? It's probably 1,200 words. But those are both misleading because of the number of articles that I have and the way that I do content. What can be more helpful is I do sprints of work. So I may have, 100 articles written, and then I'll publish like all 100 within a month. Right. So that's kind of how I work. As far as the word length, it's however long it needs to be. So again, not super useful. So if it's new KGR content, keyword golden ratio content, then I will make it 1,000 words. And then if it's getting good traction, maybe I'll bump it up to like 5,000 words, something like that. Brandon says that the $50 includes formatting, links, and posting to your site as well. Okay. So Brandon, here's the deal. Like I mentioned it earlier, but I think it was before you joined. It's not really about the price, it's about the ROI that you're hoping to get, right? We have to make some assumptions. We don't know the ROI that we're going to get until we do it. Here's the deal. If it's non-native, I don't know. Like it's still all the stuff you're saying is really interesting, but I don't think it's worth it. So, all right. Andy says you just started writing yourself 10 articles with 1,200 words, all with the keyword golden ratio, and you're starting to look for native British writers. Cool. Good luck. Hydra says, do I suggest outsourcing all of your writing? What percent of the articles do I write myself? It's totally up to you and your business model. So if it was up to, here's what I do that may be more helpful. I write like 0% of the articles and I outsource it all at this point. I'm not a very fast writer. I type slow. I'm very slow. All right. So I know it's not a good thing for me to spend my time on. So it's much better for me to hire people who are better writers than I am. And Awesomeness Design Studio says, how many articles should I have in an Amazon niche site? How? Okay. Again, it's tough for me. I can answer the questions, but my answers are useless, right? Um, they're useless out of context, and these questions are out of context. If you're launching your site, Design Studio, 10 articles. All right. So you just need 10 articles. How many should you have in a site total? That's like how many books should you have in a library? Well, it depends. How big is the town? Like, what kind of library is it? What kind of books do you want to have in the library? What's your budget? So there's a lot of factors in this question, and you should start with 10 and then you should grow slowly over time in a way that fits your budget and your goals. So I hope that's helpful. All right, Josh, find the Bitly link and ask some questions for Friday. I will mention this. So, Doug, I'm completely blubbered and overwhelmed with niche research as far as finding article topics. Any tips on planning out your content for the next few months? So, this is just project management or any kind of goal setting. Figure out like how many articles you want to publish, say, in the next 90 days, and then work backwards. Um, Figure out how many you need to publish in the last month, and then the middle month, and then the first month, and then break it down for each one of those. Say you know 1 week segments where you're like, all right, this is how much work I need to do for each of these weeks, and then figure out the articles that you want to write. So I don't think that probably helped you. I'm sorry, but it's hard to say. There are frameworks that you could use, like that's in Five Figure Niche Site, that help you like go from you know 30 ideas to the two that are good choices. But it's beyond the scope of what I'm covering today. Lance, define good traction and when to think about adding to content. No, Lance, you're a member of the course, and I'll bend over backwards if you ask a question. And you're a moderator too, Lance. So basically, you publish your keyword golden ratio content. And Lance, I know that you're in a position right now where like maybe you have a couple articles that are doing well. That's what I mean with traction. So if you have an article that started at 100 and then it's down to like it's moving up in the rankings and it's maybe ranked number 12, that's good momentum. Google is getting good signs from visitors. And basically, if you add, let's say you have 1,000 words on there right now, if you add 2,000 more words by using like the FAQ method and RPM, then you're probably going to move up in the rankings and you're probably going to get more long tail traffic. So when I say good traction, I mean you're getting traction on Google and you're getting a couple more visitors or a lot more visitors to certain posts. Basically, we're looking at what's working and then doing it harder versus like looking at stuff that isn't working and trying to improve that. We're looking at what's working and then doubling down on that. All right. David says you have 4 niche sites as a beginner with 25 articles. How long do I think it should take to see results? And how should I monitor what articles are working for me? Okay, David, this is slightly off topic, but you seem like a good guy. First, if you're a beginner, you should not be working on 4 sites at once. Think if you would have put all of the articles on just one site. You'd have a site with like 100 articles and you wouldn't be so scattered. I feel stressed out for you. You have more active sites than I do right now, sort of. The point is, if you're a beginner, this is a really bad mistake. And this is why I'm answering this question. I hope a lot of people can learn from this one. Okay. When you're a beginner, you will make mistakes and it is okay. All right. You're going to make some mistakes. I'm making mistakes constantly. All right. I'm still making mistakes. They're just bigger mistakes now. So here's the deal, David. If you are a beginner and you're working on one site, you're going to make some mistakes. And then you'll figure out what those mistakes are and you'll fix it. And then hopefully you'll move on with your life and slowly improve, stop making those mistakes, that sort of thing, right? Learn from your mistakes. If you have 4 sites, David, you have 4 sites going on, all right? You're going to make the mistake on the first site and then you're going to make it on the next one and then on the other 2 also. So you've made the mistake 4 times and you have 25 articles, right? So let's say, for example, you put the images on in the wrong way or something, right? Some minor thing. Now, instead of just having to fix the articles on the one site, you now made a mistake that you're going to have to fix across 4 sites. You will feel defeated, frustrated, and like this is a waste of time. Some people are quite stubborn, like myself, and you may be able to power through some things. But basically, you're not allowing yourself to learn from your mistakes. You are allowing yourself to make the same mistake over and over again because a lot of times you won't know you made the mistake until some weeks later. All right. So, David, if I can give you advice, I would say just pick one site, your favorite site, the best site that you could work on now, and then ignore the other 3 for a little bit. And you ask, how long do I think it should take to see results? I would say if you're following along with like my course, 5-figure niche site, then it's like if you're working on it each day, 6 to 8 weeks, right? You should have traffic. You should be making your first few bucks. If you're working on it a little bit slower, I would say if you already have 4 sites with 25 articles, you should be making some money already. But I don't know what model you're following. There are many different methods to do things. And I just talk about, what I know, but I'm not saying my way is the only way. So if you have a different master plan, perhaps, it'll work just fine. Molsk asks, what do I think of Text Broker? I don't like it. And I mentioned Text Broker a minute ago. I ended up getting articles back where they ran it through Copyscape and they told me a higher percentage that I was happy with was actually copied. So I stopped working with them. And they, like, if you want to get good quality articles, Text Broker is actually really expensive. So if you go to like 4 to 5 stars, it's quite expensive. John says, how much can you earn if you do the keyword golden ratio correctly after the sandbox, after 10, 20, and 200 articles? I'm not sure, John. That's a tough one to answer. I would imagine here's the hard part, right? The price range of the articles that you're writing like has a lot of impact on your earnings and a lot of other things too. However, I would say if you have 200 articles, and that's one I could like give you some, more information. If you publish like 200 articles, I would imagine this is like an order of magnitude. This is like an estimate in, project management. It's going to be like 100% plus or minus off. All right. So it could be half or double. Like it could be very, very incorrect. So 200 articles, I would imagine you're probably going to be making 5K a month, give or take most of it. All right. So huge guess. And you never know until like a year after you publish the 200 articles. Okay. Josh says, is there a decent amount of ranking momentum an article should rank without links? In other words, how long should it take for a KGR to hit? What do you mean by hit? And Josh, if I remember right, I think you just posted something in the last week or so. So the answer is wait for like 2 months and then ask me. All right. So do work, like keep publishing more keyword golden ratio content, put your head down, get some shit done. And then in 2 months, then you ask, right? Because like if you're not giving it enough time, then that's probably the issue. Also, I mean, you could have like on-page SEO issues or something like that, right? Like if you're like keyword stuffing, it's going to throw everything off. Okay, and Lance is mentioning that most of your posts are moving up daily. A few are dud, so you'll focus on the movers and shakers. Yep, that is what we should do. Like focus on what's working. Don't try and you know, fix something that's broken if you have some stuff working well. Polina, what's up? You say when you're hiring writers from Upwork, doesn't matter if they're from the Philippines, et cetera, or do I employ people only from the US or UK? So I usually filter on like, I'm trying to remember. I may filter on like North America or something like that. But here's the thing, I don't care where someone's located. I don't actually care where they're from or anything like that. However, it is very important to like for my writing, right, to have them understand and be fluent in American English, including slang. Now, I'm actually half Filipino, all right? So I know that Filipinos speak like English like pretty well, right? However, unless they've lived in America or have like relatives, there's still like some quirky stuff. Now I know they watch a lot of American television and stuff like that, so you can like bridge the gap. But for me personally, I found it like just fine to hire like I said, an English grad student in the US who is, fluent in American English and slang and knows how to, do what I need them to do. But I would encourage you to experiment because I've hired probably a dozen writers from the Philippines. I've hired a lot from just various other places as well. All right. And then Justin, what's up? Good to see you. What's my criteria for hiring a full-time writer after they do a post for you? Okay. So Justin is another fine student. Feel free to reach out to me via the support email if you have follow-ups or you need like more interaction. Justin, basically, I hire them on a few trial jobs. So I'll hire them like two or three times for like one or two articles so that there's some interaction and back and forth. Additionally, for each new job that I'm hiring them for, I can leave them another review. Again, part of the currency that we can give to them, aside from just the monetary payment, is reviews, right? If we could help them build the reviews, that's good for them. And they know it. And actually, I will point it out and I'll say, hey, I want to hire you for a few more trial jobs. And I'm like, I'm happy to create new jobs so that I may post more reviews for you. And even though it's more overhead for me to create the jobs and hire you and so on, I'm happy to do it because I know the reviews help you. Don't be afraid to be explicit and say that it'll be a good thing for them. So after I hire them a few times and I know that they're consistent, then I'll say, hey, do you want to come on for, more writing? I've never actually hired a writer full time. Most of them prefer to work like 20 hours or so. So I've done a couple people up to 20 hours. And at that point, I make sure we have a system, right? However you want to do it. Spreadsheets are easy. And then I could just list the articles I want them to write, a status column, and then like maybe a date, whatever you want in there, but simple is better. And then you're able to just like share the sheet with them. and they'll hammer through it, right? They'll hammer through it. And I'm always trying to communicate well. Writers burnout. I think Duke mentioned that writers, basically they can do a lot, but at some point they may get bored of the topic. So I try and communicate to make sure, um, like they're okay. They're not going to just like leave all of a sudden. So hopefully that helps, Justin. Andy says, "Oh wow, I'm getting behind here." All right, and Duke says, "You see, oh, another moderator. You're lurking, lurking in the background." Okay, I'll try and keep an eye on it too. Andy says, "What type of ROI in percent do I expect once I choose a writer?" So that's difficult, and I'm gonna not backtrack, but here's the deal. I'm not 100% of the long-term ROI because, for example, one of the links actually in the description is for like when I publish 200 articles using the keyword golden ratio, and you know, the site grew a lot, right? The revenue went up. Here's the thing. I know that I got my money back within like 2 months or so, right? So it was pretty quick. And then after that, it's just on top of, right? So I knew I got my initial investment back very quickly. And then after that, it just grew. If I were to sell the site, then the the ROI is even higher because then you're taking like 35x of like monthly revenue and compressing it all into like 1 month, right? So the ROI gets funny. I'm not a financial person, so I'm not very good at that. Basically, what type of ROI? So I can't answer your question, right? So I talked about the ROI, but really what I'm saying is just because a person can hire a writer for cheaper doesn't mean that that's better. If you hire someone who's writing like bad content, then obviously it's not going to pay off as well. So if you, so I don't know, Andy, I'm not sure. Sorry. Polina says, "Do I interview writers from Upwork?" No. All right. Um, let's see. So basically, I found that interviewing is not very effective, and you're better off just hiring someone, seeing how they work, and then go from there. Ravi says, Ravi, okay, about the course, five figure niche site. Be sure you email me, okay? So the course is not open for enrollment currently, and I know you had some chatter and stuff for. Okay, and Ravi, you may not be a good fit. It's not $69 for 1 month. So okay. David, you're grateful. Fabulous consideration. Okay. Awesome. Glad that was helpful. Have I worked with, this is from Pretoria, SEO Content Hero? No, I haven't. I don't know. Polina says, can I make some short video interviewing one of the writers from Upwork? Okay. Yeah, I've never. Hmm. Polina, what help would that provide interviewing one of the writers from Upwork? Just curious. All right. Shana 2, what are my thoughts on word agents? Are very expensive. I've never used them. I'm not sure. For that price, I expect it to be fantastic. Prep Mesh, if a comparison table site is ranking in the top two positions and then blah, 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 should you go for it? Whatever you want, man. Yeah, go for it. Oh, John says, would I hire? And by the way, if people are just joining up, it's awesome. Thanks for joining. Um, if you have if you have questions that are not related to content, it would be best to hold them to Friday. However, I know it's just so hard, and I can never control these live streams. And you know what? Maybe I'll just answer all the questions. Okay. There's a Bitly link though, and I forgot to paste it in this description here. By the way, we have like 58 people, but only 28 likes. I guess that's pretty good considering I haven't asked for anyone to like this video. So If I answered your question or if I was helpful, please like the video. That helps other people find it. And David, I'm glad that the advice found you well. So, all right. Josh says if I had 5,000 in loot, would I buy all guest posts or content? It's not really binary, man. You don't have to do one or the other. So I would suggest doing both. Um, and John says, would I hire a high schooler or undergrad who writes great? Yes, I definitely would. Um, Shane says, would I buy guest posts? Generally, no. Someone was just emailing me about this one of the super common questions. Generally, no, right? Here's what I find. Number one, I'm getting like 3 emails a day from people trying to pitch me. So I have a feeling the services are going to be burned out soon. They're probably burning through email addresses because they're spamming the internet with garbage, like asking people to, you know, put a link on their site. And it's really tiring, right? So I feel like I need to filter those out. But basically, as far as guest posts, I feel like the only way that you can make sure that it's done the right way is if you do it yourself or if you hire someone in which you train to do it your way. So I think if you pay for them, you're probably not going to get the best that you should be aiming for. But if it's only a portion of your links, then maybe it's okay. All right. Hiking Gear Lab says, I think you're using hourly based contracts on Upwork. Okay. That is a statement with a question mark on the end, but I do understand what you're saying. The answer is I'm using whichever contract makes sense for whatever work that I'm doing. So I do some fixed bid, I do some hourly stuff depending on what they're doing. For writing, right, for content, I'm doing fixed bid. For any kind of like time based work, right, like editing or content management, then I use an hourly contract. Awesomeness Design Studio says, is there a way to make sure that the content I'm getting is not copied from any other source? You can use Copyscape, or a trick if you don't want to use Copyscape is to get a sentence and then Google the sentence and see if it shows up somewhere. That's really time consuming and boring. So I would just say if you hire a good writer, you don't have to worry about it too much. All right. And let's see. Shan says, how about having a site like 10 Beasts and buying guest posts and scholarship to rank it instead of going to a specific niche and building a site around it? It sounds very interesting. That's not really my model, so I can't speak about that. I would avoid it though. I think if you have to ask, right? So if you have to ask, like, hey, is this a good idea? Do you think I should do it? Do you think I can do it? You probably can't do it. So, and I don't know you, Shan. I know you're on these often, and I appreciate it. But I would say if you're going to do something like that, you should maybe have a broad brand, but I think you should focus in a way that allows you to expand. But if you set out to do some kind of huge thing, if you're like, hey, I want to be the next wire cutter, like that's a 10-year plan, right? Like that's pretty tough to do. Andy says, should we aim for 0% copyscape? I am not 100% sure. I have a feeling that probably less than, I'm not sure. You need to check this out, see what Copyscape says, but I imagine I don't use Copyscape. I don't use any of the stuff that people are talking about. I imagine it's okay to have some overlap. Maybe you're quoting something or something maybe is quoted an excerpt from another site, which is totally fine. That would be okay. So if you have some small percentage, like probably under 10%, that's probably fine. All right. Molsk says, how do you decide how much content you have to write for a keyword? Basically, I look at the competition and then take an average and then maybe add 10%. Do I orient myself on a search volume to estimate how long an article should be? Generally, no. Hydra says, you always like the video right when you're joining. Thanks for doing that. One of YouTube's main algorithms is engagement, likes, comments, and shares. Yes, thanks. I appreciate that. Justin says, can I share other than bad grammar? What would make you not use an article on the site? And you've never used Upwork, so does your money go into escrow and then you pay when you accept it? So yes, about the escrow. That's part of the reason why I use Upwork. They charge you, right? You have to pay for the service, but you get certain protection. The escrow and the system is part of that. And there have been times where I've like requested, like a freelancer would disappear and the money was in escrow and all the communication was done via their messaging system. So I just opened a ticket and I said, hey, this person never replied back. And I asked him or her, you know, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. It's beyond the deadline. And they just gave me a refund, right? So if the person disappears, you are protected. Um, and then other than bad grammar, general, like if it's Justin, if the article is a total mess, if it doesn't make sense, if it's not coherent, that would be the other thing. So sort of hand in hand with bad grammar. It's rare, but like sometimes it's just like poorly written. Like I had one person who was just like angry all the time or something, and it came through the tone of the writing. They sounded angry about a product review, and it was just weird. That's very rare, of course, but yeah, that would be the only other thing. Hamza says you're a web developer, you have some SEO background, but you only lose time creating websites for other clients. You've never had the chance to focus on a niche website because you're afraid. And then I'm going to read ahead. So you're afraid that you'll invest time and money without having any good results. Any advice, Mr. Doug? So my advice is just get started. You probably will. You know what? That never goes away, by the way. It never goes away. You're always like, is this really worth it? And it's part of like entrepreneurship. So I had like a similar sort of, well, not web development, but I have like an IT background. So the point is, if you're used to a job where, I mean, we're like high tech factory workers, right? Tons of people work in IT. I know that we're like we're factory workers of like the modern age, right? So you're used to just showing up, doing your job, stuff like that. And if you're trying to do something on your own, everything's uncertain and you're probably right. Like you probably will like end up, quote, wasting some of the time in the beginning while you're learning, but it'll turn out that like you needed to do that to get to where you want to be. So you will in fact waste time, you will make mistakes and you will think, hey, I wish that didn't happen. But of course, a couple years down the line, you're like, well, I actually needed to go through that period where I literally got no like visible production or ROI, but it's the experience that you need. So hopefully that makes sense. I would say get started as soon as possible because once you get that out of your system a little bit, you'll be in better shape. Okay, and Andy is saying you heard that we can ask uni teachers to select students to work for your project as it's part of their training. Would I go in that direction? I don't know. I haven't heard of that, but that's an interesting idea. Josh says, Josh is mentioning you get distracted, you hop from one project to another. What can I do project management wise to stay on focus and stay like away from shiny objects? All right. I'm not sure, Josh. Here's the thing. Josh, you emailed me like a year ago, right? And we were going to do a coaching session to get you on track, right? Um, so I would say you need to figure out how you work. This is way off topic, but Josh, you need this. Um, some people are like intrinsically motivated to stay on task. Like if they set a goal internally, then you'll stick to it, right? That trumps like external forces. Other people are like, oh, if my boss like is asking me to do something, I'm definitely going to show up. They asked me to do it. It's really important for me to fulfill like that external force, someone asking you to do something, right? Or, maybe it's not a boss. Maybe it's actually like a contest. Maybe it's a contest, but it's an external force and you and your, three friends are going to compete and you're like, who can get the most things like done in X amount of time, right? Say it's a niche site. The point is you have to figure out if you're like internally or externally motivated. Probably everyone's a little bit of a blend, but some people are more one than the other. And the point is, Josh, like project management is not going to like help you. You have to figure out like what motivates you internally and then figure out how you have to just sort of change your day to get this stuff done. And I'm distracted all the time, right? I'm distracted all the time, but um if I'm like, all right, I have like a big goal that I want to accomplish, then I'm usually pretty good at focusing down. I may go 10 days in a row where I'm like scattered all over the place. And then if I could work for 2 days, it makes up for all that lost time. I think a lot of people are probably like that. So Josh, you need to focus up, figure out how you're motivated. Danish says you have a long tail keyword. Shall you start a new post or should you add it to a 5,000 word post? Totally up to you. So the example is best ballpoint pens is the main article having 5,000 words. The long tail is related. Okay. So it's like best ballpoint pen and then best ballpoint pen for cardboard. Um, there are certain like things you could check on to analyze which would be better, but it's totally up to you. And just without knowing more details, I would say if the article could stand alone, write it by itself. And if it fits better in the big article, then put it in there, which that's probably not helpful. All right. Fasail says, you heard in one of the videos about the Amazon review article template. Where do you find it? I think if you search for article review templates or the perfect Amazon review, let's just see what comes up. So let's call it the perfect Amazon review. It doesn't show up as high as a perfect Amazon review. And I bet in YouTube it'll show up there for you. Anyway, I would say search for Amazon review, the perfect Amazon review, and Doug. And I bet you'll be able to find it. Okay. And I see another question about copy or unique. This sounds like a video idea, I guess, if everyone's asking about it. So thanks, Dcard, for mentioning that. Hydra says, you're not sure if it was talked about, but what's a decent price to pay for editing? You write a lot of your own articles, but your grammar sucks, so you should outsource. Hydra, I pay between 10 and 20 bucks an hour to do editing. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah, Steven says you're distracted by craft beer. Totally. Hummus says, what is a suitable price for 4,000 words? Okay, so good question. So for 1,000 words, I'm paying 15 bucks. So you could just multiply that by four. That's a good range. However, there are many factors involved. So it just depends on if it's like a highly technical thing or if they're really qualified or something. Adam says, you've stopped hiring people for just a couple articles since they don't seem as invested in the articles. You have writers part time on three sites you're working on and one writer for each site. Cool, cool. Um, and Adam says, you had five soft launches in January. Yeah, shoot me an email, Adam. This sounds interesting. All right. And Andy says, thanks. You're welcome. And you got to run to work. So have a good one. All right. And one thing I'm going to check, and I'm just curious, we actually have quite a few people. We still have 50 people on. I was just going to check. If you haven't liked the video, like if you just joined or something, appreciate it if you hit the like button. If you're watching the replay, um, leave a comment, or if you're watching now live, leave a comment after we stop recording. That's helpful. I think comments are like the big thing, right? All right, any other questions out there? And I'll mention that on Fridays we do the random Q&A, but I've tried hard to control the content of the questions, and people are getting better, and I appreciate that. But every now and then some people just they join up and then they just start asking questions. And, I can't blame you for that. Um, I can't blame you for that. But it does make it kind of a mess. And, you know, like I was saying about content, you don't fight Google, right? Don't, if you have a piece of content that's not working, don't worry about it. Just ignore it and then work on the stuff, like work on the content that is, improving in rankings. You're getting traction, right? It's doing well, so go make it better. And I try to keep the questions around the topic of the day. But you know what? It seems like people get a lot of value by being able to ask more questions. So it's silly for me to try and, hammer you about it. So, okay. And Hamas is saying, you want to know who the writer is. So no, I don't usually recommend my writers out. If I do, it is only to my students. Typically, if I find a good writer, I need them to do writing for me. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really serve me well to get rid of my writers and get them to someone else, right? Plus, they would probably prefer to work with me since I'm helping them out and stuff. So if they only have limited time, they probably stick working with me. Or if you were able to lure them over, well, then you'd have to pay more than I am. But basically, I only recommend my writers to my students and or coaching folks. So, all right, cool. Andy, thanks. Appreciate it. Steven and Hama, sorry, I can't recommend people. Find your own writers. It's not hard. Go get the templates. You could do, I share everything, right? I just told you how I'm approaching it. And then you could use the templates that I use, and then you could develop these skills on your own. All right. Thanks everyone for liking the videos. Um, awesome. All right. And Hydra, I'm going to try to get the old super chat feature on and see how it goes. And yeah, Simon, give me a shout about the coaching. Hopefully we'll be able to hook up soon. Thanks everyone. I'm going to get out of here. Don't forget Friday, there's another Q&A live session.